Carolyn?
Yes.
I think a lot of people were expecting to hear from him today, and he didn't. Would you have liked to have heard what he had to say?
Yes, I would have. That would have been something I wish I could have sit down and talked to him and asked him, what actually happened. You could tell me the truth. Why did you do that? I would want to hear what he had to say. I don't know why he chose not to talk or why he wasn't allowed. I don't know the procedure, but I was hoping he was going to get on the stand to defend what he did. But he didn't.
And to say you're sorry, I guess, or express some remorse.
I mean, he could say he's sorry. 4.5 years ago, he could have said he was sorry. He probably would have meant more then. But a sorry, I would take any sorry. Not saying that I will forget, but a sorry means you at least thought about what you did and you feel maybe you didn't do everything right, so I'm sorry. That's what I take a sorry as. But it's been 4.5 years and he doesn't look me in the eye either,
Do you want to hear from him now?
Right now, at this moment, it really wouldn't matter. Because sorry comes to me when you're sorry, not because you got the consequences and then say you're sorry. You can say you're sorry, but it doesn't have the same weight for me. I still would accept it, but it doesn't have the same weight as when it happened. It's like you got your hand in a cookie jar. If you don't get caught, okay, but once you get caught, oh, I'm sorry. When you can say sorry, when you knew you wasn't supposed to do that, so.
Maybe this might be a question for the family, could be a question for someone on the legal team. Does it seem as if Robert Olsen gambled and won here because he turned down that plea offer?
I don't think we can speculate about gambling. Clearly, we pushed forward and felt strongly that a murder charge was the appropriate charge in this case, which is why the offer, although it was for 15, was, as Mr. Johnson stated, for him to plead guilty to manslaughter, to voluntary manslaughter, and to accept responsibility that the actions he took were murder. And so they challenged that, as they had the right to do. And we always knew that, as you saw, this jury deliberated for 6 days. We see this all over the country, not just here in Georgia, that getting a murder conviction against an officer for shooting a private citizen is extremely difficult. It's not an easy path, and I am grateful for my team for all the work that they put in. And again, just by getting the aggravated assault conviction allowed us to be even having this conversation today. I think what you see too often across the nation right now is full acquittals on the serious charges, the felony murders, the manslaughters, the aggravated assaults, which only leave minor charges like a violation of oath of office. But this jury did speak loudly and clearly, despite the fact that they wrestled with the murder charge, but they did hold Robert Olsen accountable for Tony Hill's death by saying guilty to aggravated assault, guilty to violation of oath, guilty to making false statements, covering up his crimes. And so with that, we were able to seek a measure of justice for him and for this family.
The judge in her sentence, she invoked the Son of Sam ruling about making profit off of his death.
Yes.
I don't normally hear judges add that as part of the sentence. Is this something? Was there something that you guys knew about, like a deal or something?
No, I am not aware of any offers of book deals or movies or any interviews that Mr. Olsen can profit from. Why the judge did that, I won't speculate. I can just say that I think she was just making it clear that if there were that opportunity, given the high profile nature of this case, she wanted the record to reflect very specifically that there should be no profit from this family's loss.
Do you know what the specific breakdown of each count as it relates to the entire 20-year sentence is?
Yes. I'm gonna bring up Deputy Chief Assistant Buffy Thomas because she actually saw the sentence sheet, unlike the rest of us.
Hi, good afternoon. So as it relates to the breakdown of the sentence, as to count 3, which is the aggravated assault count, the judge imposed a sentence of 15 years to serve 12 years in custody. So he will serve 12 years in custody. The remaining 3 years will be on probation. As to count 4, which was the violation of oath of office by public officer, she sentenced him to 5 years in custody to run concurrent with the custodial portion of count 3. Count 5, which was the false statement charge, merged with count 6, which was the violation of oath of office by public officer, and she sentenced him to 5 years probation as to that count to run consecutive to the sentences in counts 3 and 4.
All right, if there are, one last question and we'll wrap it up.
Do we have any idea where he'll go? What prison he'll be sent to?
We do not, that will be a decision made by the Department of Corrections after they diagnose and make a decision on the best place for him to go.
One last one. ADA Johnson talked often about the community. You brought it up often, meaning to the judge. And so the judge was looking out at the community while doing this. In bringing that up, could you explain as to what you were trying to impart to the judge?
I mean, just what I said, which was that, you know, this is the type of case that the community looks at, and we, as the prosecutor's office, have to ensure that justice is done and justice is met, no matter who you are, whether you're a police officer or a regular citizen. And that's why I wanted to bring up the community so that doesn't get lost in this. You know, sometimes our victims and members of the community get lost in it, and all we talk about are the defendants. Defendants are important. That's appropriate sentencing with defendants is absolutely 100% important, and we work towards that every day in this office, towards doing things that are appropriate and not just, you know, rubber stamping. But in these types of cases, like it's been heard already, many times we don't hear much about the victim and the victim's family. We hear about the police officers, or we don't hear about the community that's been torn apart, where they are now afraid sometimes to call 911 because of what could happen, and we want to fix that. And so one of the ways was to bring it to the judge's attention and let her be aware of that when she decided on whatever the appropriate sentence was.
D.A. Johnson, you made a point to mention that there was no DeKalb County cops that came in to offer a statement in, you know, on behalf of Olsen. What do you think about the witnesses that they brought up to speak on his behalf?
I mean, look, everybody has family and friends, and, you know, the defendant, Robert Olsen's no different. He has family and friends that care about him, and they're the folks that are gonna come in and speak on his behalf. I would expect everybody in this room could find, hopefully, a few people who would come in and speak on their behalf. And so, you know, they did what they had to do, and I respect that. My job was just to kind of point out some of the issues with the case that we felt were important that they may not be aware of.
Steve, how do you feel about this sentencing?
We're disappointed, but we believe that the guilty verdict and the fact that we got as far as we did is great. You know, that is something that I think, you know, we look at cases across the country and we don't know sometimes going into these cases what's gonna happen on the outcome, and the fact that a jury found him guilty, held him accountable, and that he will serve time in prison, and that there is some measure of solace for the family on that, we believe is a good thing.
Does this send a message to police departments, to police officers? You know, you keep hearing about the split-second decisions. What will this do?
Well, what we never want to do is have police officers looking over their shoulder when they're out on the streets, because they do have a tough job, but they have to act reasonably. And I think you have a majority of officers out there, the men and women who work for DeKalb County and all the police departments here in Georgia do their job. And there's the few outliers that don't, and those are the ones that need to be held accountable. And what they need to know is if they don't, then they will be held accountable, and we'll prosecute as necessary based on what they do. We want people to think twice too. I think that D.A. Boston brought it up that, you know, the police department and the county have worked towards, since this happened, better training for the officers when dealing with situations like this, that they can de-escalate rather than escalate a situation. And so I think training and education are a big thing that they can do and that any department can do. And I think that the DeKalb County Police Department has done a great job of improving that since this happened back in 2015.
I just want to thank you for recognizing the support that were in the room, and there were 35 of us in the whole room.
And as we wrap up, I am going to invite up Mr. Aaron Eccles just to give brief closing remarks on behalf of the family.
She said Aaron Eccles.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Eric.
It's Eric Eccles, private investigator. First of all, I want to say, and I want to thank Ms. Boston for the comment she made about teamwork. As a private investigator getting involved in a case like this, and turning my facts and evidence that I found over to the DA to secure an indictment. And then them taking that to the next step, which it brought Ms. Boston and her team in to secure the prosecution. It's a testament of someone who's in the private sector as an investigator can work in conjunction with a public sector, with the DA's office for a common goal, which is justice. And that's the message that needs to be said here today. It's justice for Anthony Hill. And sometimes people out there in the community needs to know it's okay to talk. Oftentimes people don't want to talk, they don't want to give up information. It makes it difficult for a team like Ms. Boston's to prosecute different cases, whereas someone on the public sector, on the private sector, such as myself, can go in and talk to them. But it shows there's a good working relationship. And at the end of the day, we got justice for Anthony Hill. And I think that's a testament to everybody.
Mr. Eccles, do you think that whatever level of investigation was done before you stepped into the scene, was there little information brought forth because people wouldn't talk to police investigators, or because investigators weren't out there asking questions?
Well, I think it's a combination, more so that people didn't want to talk to police officers. When you have a history of events like this, where you look at the past and African Americans have been gunned down and shot by police officers, and then you look at the community in which Anthony Hill lived, and let's be honest, it's a Hispanic populated community. You know, there are a lot of people out there who probably weren't legal. There were probably people, you know, I run across people who have warrants on them, and a lot of times those individuals just don't want to talk to the police officers. So it's not against the police officer or asking the right questions or going to the people. It's just a lot of times the people are afraid to talk to them. Whereas talking to myself or a private investigator, I'm not going to run you to see if you got warrants. I just want the truth, and then I want the facts to support it. And then that's what happened in this case.
Would we have been here today if you hadn't hit the ground running out there?
You know, I've asked myself that question, and let me say this. It was a joint effort of teamwork. I will say, I think that the video with Anthony, with Robert Olsen pounding his chest that I found and gave to the DA's office was paramount to convicting him as lying under oath. But again, it was a team effort from myself to the old regime and to Sherry Boston and her great team of people.
Who were you working with? You were a private investigator.
Yes.
Were you doing it upon your own?
Well, at the
self,
time,
or were you-
I was hired by the Chestnut firm. I was working on behalf of on the civil case.
Okay.
And oftentimes, when I get involved in wrongful death cases or security negligence, premise liability cases, I find evidence that may be helpful to the police department, and I always give that information to them.
All right, thank you so much for your time and your attention.
Thank you.